Florida State and Clemson could not have had different opening weekends this last week, but what if I told you that their opening games were decided long before the Seminoles, Blue Devils, or either group of Tigers took the field? What if I told you that Mike Norvell and Dabo Swinney's philosophical differences decided their team's outcomes years before Labor Day 2023? Well, we're going to talk about that, but first, I want to back up just a little bit. Do you remember 2018? Do you remember the professor in the crowd reading the book at Doak Campbell Stadium? It's probably the greatest meme from this rivalry. And it reminds FSU fans painfully of just how bad things got there in Tallahassee. But then 2019, the Seminoles finished the game on a 14-3 run, but the big problem in that one was that they had given up 6 unanswered touchdowns to start the game. How about in 2020, when the teams traded thinly veiled insults and hurled accusations at each other over a COVID cancellation? And even though fans of both sides are still riding with their program and the decisions that were made around that game, they both know what would have happened had that game been played. But something changed in 2021. FSU hung around and made it just enough of a game to give hope. They made just enough spectacular plays to be in the game and even have a lead with less than 4 minutes to go. Now, we know that they weren't able to hold on to it, but it felt like the tides might be shifting. In 2022, the teams played very close for the first 28 minutes. But due to a couple of FSU errors, Clemson scored with 19 seconds to go in the first half, and then with 19 seconds gone in the second half, and the Tigers had a 3-score lead that they would never give up, despite FSU raging back to make it a 1-score game. But each year since 2018, Florida State and Clemson have gotten one step closer to each other, and there isn't a Tigers fan or a Seminoles fan out there that wouldn't agree with you that these are the closest these two teams have been since maybe 2014, maybe 2016. That 2016 game that Clemson won in a thriller in the famous chop block game in Doak. But why are the teams so much closer in their play right now? Why are the talent levels so much closer? Well, it's pretty simple, and you really don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out by any means. In 2023, Clemson's recruiting class was 8 spots higher than FSU's. 2022, it was 10 spots higher. And in 2021, it was 18 spots higher. So the talent shouldn't be this close, should it? Well, it is. And there's one reason. Mike Norvell has gotten this roster to an elite level by working with great precision, I might add, the transfer portal. And that is something that is very well documented. I don't have to tell you guys about the impact that Florida State has made through the portal. But while Florida State has absolutely dominated, Dabo Swinney has taken the absolute opposite approach. And he's refused to use the portal. He has not only not embraced it, he has far from embraced it. He's talked down about it. He's talked bad about it. He's on record stating that he doesn't want to use it. He likes Clemson to be a foundational and developmental program. And that sounds good, right? Sure it does. But in reality, it's starting to hurt him. Dabo hasn't recruited certain positions well recently, and certainly not as well as he has in the past. And that's costing him right now. Against Duke, his wide receivers couldn't get separation. And I'm not taking a shot here, but that was against Duke. What do you guys think happens when they have to play Florida State? His trenches look good at times, but they weren't getting the push that we're accustomed to Clemson offensive and defensive lines getting. And again, against Duke. Meanwhile, Florida State's trenches absolutely dominated a very good top 5 SEC opponent. And I know it was just the first game, and Clemson's wide receivers weren't very good, but Klubnik didn't look great to me. And I'm not saying that they could have definitely landed an impact quarterback, but they didn't even try. They lost DJ to the portal and didn't even try to bring in somebody to replace him. But not even taking a swing is brutal. Now, I've heard from Clemson fans. I know what you guys' thoughts are on this. You understand the approach. They get that this has always worked for Dabo, and it's hard to say too much negative about it at this moment. But it reminds me of another coach that refused to adjust. It reminds me of another coach who was stubborn and let the ever-changing college football world pass him and his complex and difficult pro-style offense by. It reminds me of Jimbo Fisher, where we could see the cracks starting to form in a once proud dynasty we saw when they started to show up. We saw the offensive line falling behind. We saw the recruiting falling behind. We saw the offense becoming stagnant. We saw his inability to adjust when a quarterback's skill set was not a Jameis Winston type. Jimbo wouldn't change his offense. He wouldn't upgrade. He wouldn't make different changes at the coordinator positions. And he wouldn't adjust in this new era of college football, which is exactly what Dabo is doing right now. You see, Mike Norvell doesn't have a problem at wide receiver because he went out and got Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and Deuce Spann and Jaheim Bell. He doesn't have a problem in the trenches because he went out and got guys like Jared Verse and Braden Fiss and Casey Roddick and Jeremiah Byers and others. But Dabo has handicapped himself. He has literally handcuffed one arm behind his back, and that's the reason that they're struggling right now. He's not able to address immediate needs. And in college football, what the portal allows teams to do is address immediate needs. And the reason the Seminoles won on Sunday night in Orlando was because of the decision that Mike Norvell made to utilize the portal. Make no bones about that. Now, you can have all the conversations you want about high school recruiting and where that needs to get and how we're doing there, which right now, phenomenally, top 5 in the nation. But Florida State used the portal not only to improve the talent on the field, but also to leverage recruiting in the high school ranks. But going back to Sunday, the reason the Noles won was because of Mike Norvell's work in the portal. All right, I want to give some quick love to our buddy Alex Knapp. We've talked with you guys about him a ton. He was out of the tailgate. Hopefully you got a chance to meet him at the LSU game. Great guy, owns Knapp Accident and Injury, which is a law firm that specializes in car accidents, Uber and Lyft accidents, personal injury, slip and fall. If you are in need at all, take down Alex's number. It's right here on the screen. It's 813-568-3724. If you use Knapp Accident and Injury, you get Alex's personal phone number. You're not dealing with a paralegal or some kind of a case manager. He is there for you and will answer your call to get you taken care of. Listen, you may not need him today, but if you do in the future, let my guy Alex Knapp take care of you. Diehard Seminole fan, Florida State alum. Appreciate him for his support of the show. And at the same time, the reason that Clemson lost to Duke was because of their leaders' stubbornness and refusal to work that same avenue. So what's all that mean? We're just over 2 weeks away, and we've got a game on our hands in Death Valley. The top 2 odds-on favorites to win the conference, though Clemson's has taken a bit of a hit with their loss to Duke, and the only 2 teams in this conference to have done anything of importance nationally at all. They will match up in just over 2 weeks. And where does that leave us? 2 coaches with very different philosophies, 2 different ways of doing things, but 2 effective methods of building a very good team. We're not here to say that Clemson has completely fallen off the cliff and that they're going 6-6. You've got 2 very good teams built 2 very different ways. However, now that Norvell has been here for a full cycle of high schoolers coming and going, which way is better? Which team will be better on the field this year? Which team is going to be better over the last 8 games of the season? Which team is set up better for success after this season? At what point do you think Dabo might start to adjust his thinking? Do you think he'd do it at Clemson? Remember mentioning Jimbo, he didn't change his stubborn ways until he was gone. In fact, it was probably a couple of years into being at A&M that he did that. Could Dabo do something similar? Would he change at Clemson, or would he have a rebirth elsewhere? Was Duke a wake-up call for Clemson? Well, I'm not sure. Clemson played well in the game. They just didn't finish drives. But if Duke wasn't a wake-up call, then FSU will be. If Duke didn't get his attention, Florida State surely will. We talked about the decline, and Clemson fans couldn't believe that we would mention that word. They were confused by that. They said, we just won the ACC last year. What decline is there? And the simple answer was, you were winning national championships a few years prior to that. You were competing for Heismans a few years prior to that. Beating up on a down or bad ACC, a team that, a conference that doesn't even have a leader that's focused on football, is probably not the flex that you want it to be. But I do have a feeling that several guys from the transfer portal are going to do some insane things in Death Valley in just a little over 2 weeks. Maybe not quite to the 2013 level of insane, but don't be surprised if Florida State's final score is close to that. And if that happens, I'd have to guess that Dabo changes his mind and his thinking on the portal, because he's going to know that if he doesn't, he will never beat Mike Norvell head-to-head again.